everyone, it's Danny. Welcome to another Casual Sundays video. I haven't done these videos in a while because I was gone, but I am back. So, today we will discuss about how orchids can be grown successfully in all sorts of different types of media that sometimes are quite opposite, depending on location and environment. But before we go on to the subject, I would just like to thank all of the supporters we had in these past few weeks. Thank you for those of you who chose to remain anonymous, and also to our supporter More. I'm still working on those settings to manually add your donation. Right now it's not showing, but soon we'll be able to fix this problem, hopefully, and it will show in the list. We really appreciate it. I personally appreciate it a lot because there's a big move in front of me, and yeah, everything will go towards that goal. So it's really appreciated. Alrighty, let's get on with the subject. Okay, so first of all, I would like to start by saying that the key to successfully growing orchids is to find the perfect balance between air, because these orchids, or most of them, are epiphytes, and moisture. These orchids do need air and moisture, but the ratio in which they need it is quite different from any other type of houseplant. Thus, all sorts of troubles with our orchids. Now, when I say humidity or moisture, in this particular context, I refer to the moisture and humidity in the pot. Now, we use media with orchids not necessarily because they need to sit with their roots into something like any other type of plant. No, the media actually helps us improve this ratio between humidity and air. And this is why orchids don't go in soil, or epiphyte orchids are not supposed to sit in soil. This is why we actually use coarser media, to improve this air circulation, but also to maintain some humidity. Now, of course, if you grow your orchids mounted, you don't really need media. But for those of us who grow orchids in a house, displaying them into a pot is easier for us. And if things are easier for us, the orchid will be happier as well, because we can devote attention and care the proper way to our orchid. So what I'm trying to say here is that media is not necessarily something in the benefit of the orchid. The roots will not necessarily attach only to the media. They will most probably attach more to the sides of the pot than the media itself, depending on the orchid. But media is mainly used to maintain humidity and help us with this ratio between humidity and airflow into the pot. Now, with this in mind, we need to be aware that different people have different environments for their orchids, depending on where they actually live on this planet, and also the type of growing space they have, the possibilities, and of course the season. Now, I myself live in a temperate climate. This means that I have pretty humid and cold winters, but pretty dry and harsh summers, which means that I need to give a lot of humidity to my orchids because water evaporates really fast in the summertime. And some people do grow their orchids in a dry or very warm environment. So media actually helps them a lot with orchids. They don't need to water every day or multiple times a day because of the media they use. And also it's easier to maintain, and actually for the benefit of the orchid. If you don't forget to water it, the orchid will be happy and hydrated, right? Now, the media that we choose to use with our orchids depends on environment. So let's imagine that we grow our orchids in a warm and dry environment. A media that retains a little bit more water can be beneficial if we grow our orchids in a warm or dry environment. And this is because in this type of environment, water evaporates much faster than a cooler climate. So if I have two identical orchids potted in the same type of media, they will actually do very different if one is grown in a warm and dry environment and the other one is grown into a cooler, let's say more humid environment. So pure bark can actually work in a cooler environment because the water does not evaporate so fast. In a warm environment, however, pure bark will dry out in a day or two. So for the person living in the cooler environment, watering orchids will be done every 5-6 days, let's say, while for the other person who grows the same orchid in the exact same media, watering should be done every day or 2 days, so you can see the difference. Now, for warmer or drier environments, we can actually do a mixture of things. We can use bark, which is very good for ventilation, but we can also use some sphagnum moss, which retains a little bit more water. So sphagnum moss is actually an ideal solution for people who live in a dry or very warm environment, while for people who grow orchids in a cooler and more humid environment, it might not work so great. The type of media you use will also depend on the type of orchid you're growing, of course. We need to keep in mind the particularities of each orchid. So let's take, for example, a Cattleya orchid. Now, she really likes to dry out in between waterings. Also, she doesn't really like to stay moist for long periods of time. So the main solution we found to grow Cattleya orchids is to use bark chips. Bark is very, very airy, so the Cattleya will like that. Also, it does not stay moist for a long period of time, but it does hold enough moisture to keep this orchid hydrated. Now let's presume I grow my Cattleya orchid in a very humid environment. In this case, even bark can stay way too moist for its liking. So for this reason, in those particular environments, I could go and use leca beads or lava rock, which are very airy but do not hold enough water. This can work for me because the water that I have inside the pot will not evaporate so fast. So even if those types of media do not retain a lot of water, it still works for my environment because it is just so humid that water does not evaporate so fast. But if I try to use lava rock or leca or any other type of non-water retentive media in an environment which is very dry, I might run into some trouble because water will evaporate so fast that my orchid might need watering once a day, multiple times a day, but it certainly is not once every 5 days, which makes life kind of comfortable, don't you think? However, for the orchid, media doesn't really matter. As long as the ratio between humidity and moisture and air is provided, it really does not matter what type of media you use, as long, of course, as it's not toxic or stuff like that. So you can have a perfectly healthy Cattleya orchid in pure bark, or a mixture with bark and sphagnum moss, or simply lava rock, depending on your environment. Also, the size of the pot as well as type of pot you're using plays an important role as well. It's obvious that smaller pots will dry out faster because they cannot retain as much quantity of water as a bigger pot. Also, the type of pot. If you have a basket, it's easy to assume that it will dry out much faster because it is very ventilated. So in this respect, you can actually play with ventilation holes. Maybe you need more ventilation holes. Maybe you actually do not need any ventilation holes at all because of the size of the pot and your environment. And I actually think this is the trickiest part with orchids, figuring out how to balance all these factors like the type of orchid you have, the environment you have, and all the humidity and temperature and all of those factors which play an important role. Also, the type of pot you're using, type of media, and so on. This can be quite tricky for beginners, and if nobody actually explains things logically, it's actually hard to understand because people say plastic pots are better and other people say clay pots are better, while others simply say mount the orchid, no pot is good for it, which is not necessarily true because the truth is different for each and every one of us because of this different environment that we have. So what I can say is that it's really important for you guys to understand how all these factors influence the orchid and how it will do. And once you properly understand how everything works and blends together in your environment, you can take the best decisions. You can opt to use certain types of pots, certain types of media, certain types of sizes, let's say, although this is pretty relative, and what orchids actually do better for you and your environment. And since I received this question quite a lot from you guys, I hope I shed some light on the issue of why some people grow the very same orchids in completely different medias and styles than you, and they still go well. And when you try to switch to how a different person grows their orchids, you fail. It all has to do with environment and external factors, actually. And the best thing you can do is understand how everything in your environment works and just adjust things to your particular case. Okay everyone, I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please give it a thumbs up and share it with your orchid friends. If you'd like to see more videos from me, simply subscribe to my channel. I post on a daily basis. Feel free to leave me comments, questions, or suggestions for videos, even for Casual Sundays discussions in the comment section below, and I'll get back to you or make a video for you guys. Thank you so much for all the wonderful messages and comments you guys sent to me. I am really overwhelmed, and I really do appreciate each and every one of you who writes. If you click on the left side of your screen, you will be directed to orchidnature.com, where you'll find care sheets, identification sheets, and also you can talk to us in the forums section. And on the right side of your screen, you can click to watch another orchid video. Thank you so much for joining. I'll see you next time. Bye!